Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to talk about Venus's upcoming opposition to Pluto. Venus is in the later degrees of Cancer right now and is about to oppose Pluto, who is also in the later degrees of Capricorn. So I'm going to put this up in the real-time clock, and then we're going to break this combination down from an archetypal standpoint, give you some sense of what to watch for in the days to come. So here's the real-time clock, and I'm going to highlight Venus here at 24 Cancer, and here's Pluto at 26 Capricorn. If I animate this and move it forward a few days, what you're going to notice is that Venus moves through the 26th degree, opposing Pluto between now and Thursday. So here's by Thursday, it's passed over completely. So between now and Thursday is really the target for this transit. That's June 24th. So between now, I'm recording this on June 22nd and the 24th. This transit is already building, but it will perfect by Thursday. So you could even feel this transit probably all the way until the weekend, say Saturday, until Venus actually changes signs into Leo. So it is a pretty powerful transit because in the background of this transit, I want to remind everybody that we also have a really potent T-square forming right now between Mars, Saturn, and Uranus. And that T-square is going to, because it's sort of energizing everything that's going on, Mercury at the moment is stationed and turning direct. We're at a very important turning point in our yearly astrology right now, the astrology of 2021. This is a pretty big turning point because we've got the Uranus-Saturn square going on, because Mars is now energizing that Uranus-Saturn square. And then right as that's peaking, we also have a Venus-Pluto opposition. So they're all connected. They don't exist in a vacuum, of course. So the themes that we're going to talk about today could be a little bit more intense simply because of the amount of other intense transits that are also simultaneously perfecting. They tend to amplify each other's archetypal patterns in combination. So Venus-Pluto. Now we have the goddess associated with love, beauty, friendship, harmony, agreement, and we have Pluto, Hades, the word that means riches, and can be indeed a very rich sign, a sign that provides for a lot of empowerment. It's a very fertile, sort of primordial sign. It's full of depth and intensity and can actually empower whatever it touches. On the other hand, there is the underworld, sort of subterranean darkness, depth, intensity, transformative energies that come with Pluto that can sometimes be pretty dark and intense in a not so easy way. So what do we get with this combination, which I've visited, more times than I can count in my career at this point? What kind of things do we see? What kinds of things should you watch for? So I've made a list, as always. Let's talk about the most obvious one, which would be that Plutonian depth, intensity, and transformative, purgative, cathartic force in love, sex, marriage, and relationships. So in a relationship, this can be a time where people break up. It can be a time where people are, essentially having that intense, the intense kind of honeymoon phase of a relationship where everything's building with great depth and power. And you're getting like kind of captured or seized by this force that's coming out of nowhere. I can't think about anything else. I want to eat, sleep, breathe this other person in this relationship. So the kind of obsessive force that compels us in relationships when it's new, that doesn't mean it'll last either. It can be a force that indicates, a very kind of hot, steamy, but very temporary and not long lasting love affair. On the other hand, it could be a sign that there is some kind of deep emotional and relational catharsis happening that could be the indication of a new relationship starting, or a relationship that is facing its demons, a relationship that is rekindling or revitalizing its intimacy physically, sexually. It could be a sign of healing sexually. It can also be a sign of violence sexually. Pluto Venus is often associated with rape or sort of like sex crimes, anything that has kind of anything that's sort of perverse, dark, demonic, possessive around sex or love, stalkers, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, Venus, Pluto. Anytime that someone will try to, harm or disrupt a Venusian environment. So let's say a Venusian environment is a park where families are gathered. And this is the kind of energy where there's some kind of, there's a dog that bites a kid. I'm trying to be as light as I can with this, but there's a dog who bites a kid in the park. There's a woman who's mugged going jogging in the middle of the daylight in the park. Something like just the feeling of something kind of dark and subterranean coming up out of the underworld and suddenly seizing, grabbing, violating, something that's Venusian. This is Venus in Cancer, so it's a little bit more vulnerable. It hits, home, family, marriage, vulnerable places, children. So, like I've said many times, one of the previous times that we had this energy in the air, the Venus-Pluto dynamic, Mars-Pluto dynamic, several years ago when Jeffrey Epstein was, I guess he was convicted, or I remember I think it was when he was arrested. But at any rate, so anything that has to do with sex trafficking or objectification of women, as well as the themes of, say, women's empowerment, where the Plutonian force that's kind of surging up from the underworld can be an empowering force. Of course, it can be a violating one that sort of takes everyone by surprise and maybe kind of dark and destructive, like a volcano. But it can also signify, elemental empowerment themes that are coming up in relation to the feminine or to the goddess. So there's a lot of things that come up more specifically that I wrote about today, in addition to these kind of, these transformative underworld forces that are there to either regenerate and empower or compel or potentially destroy. So, for example, when you think about people who want relationships of any kind, whether it's work relationships or friendships or religious or spiritual community or whatever the case might be, to be perfectly peaceful, everyone's on the same page, nobody disagrees, everything is perfect to my liking, that when Pluto approaches, it will often be through what such a person believes to be a disagreeable person, so there's going to be that person who comes along and, they represent a threat somehow to our preferences, to what we like. And it's really important because, we often think when we're in such a space, we often think that it's that person's problem. That person is the one disturbing the peace. But there's a way in which, we will also constantly throughout our lives, Venus, Pluto have a timeless archetypal relationship. And so, the thing that is beautiful is abducted and taken away and stripped down. So, for example, our youth is stripped from us. Our beauty is stripped from us. Our bodies are eventually stripped from us. There's this inevitable way in which the darker forces of death and decay and transformation come up and steal our sense of serenity, that everything will be like this forever. Everything should be perfectly peaceful. And if we haven't made peace with that, it's not that it's easy to deal with or that we should somehow blame ourselves for the existence of such a force or reality. But if we haven't reconciled ourselves to that energy that comes out of nowhere and sort of destabilizes the peace, then it's very easy to react and to blame and to judge and to other anyone or anything that, comes in and poses a threat to our sense of what's beautiful or peaceful or serene or likable or agreeable. So there's a lot of projecting that goes on with Venus Pluto, like, oh, that's the ugly thing. That's the disruptive thing. That's the thing that I don't like. We do it to each other along different political and cultural lines. We do it to each other in terms of different aesthetic values. Well, I like this and you don't like that. And that thing is dark and my thing is light. And so when you notice those kinds of extremes coming up around beauty or peace or agreement and whatever bothers that or whatever disturbs or disrupts that, there's always an opportunity for deeper reflection. And my advice, as always, is don't be careful not to react and get caught up in trying to other and exclude and sort of damn or judge anything that feels like a violation of our sense of what is beautiful, fair, just, agreeable, and so forth. That's a Venus-Pluto dynamic. Remember that from, at least from the standpoint of Bhakti Yoga, but also from even in the myth of, say, Psyche and Eros, or Cupid and Psyche, or from the standpoint of Krishna Bhakti, for sure, different Tantra practices, love is not just this peaceful and serene experience. In Bhakti, we even say that in the enlightened state, that there's still dynamism between lover and beloved, that there's a way in which the soul and God, or the divine, continue in dynamic tension, even in the enlightened state. And that dynamic tension involves union and separation, union and separation. So this world is, in a sense, a shadow of the same kind of thing that's happening in an enlightened state, in terms of there being a constant separating and coming together, separating and coming together. And that dynamism is at the heart of what makes love so ecstatic. And so Pluto Venus is a reminder that sometimes there's a destructive principle at work within the fabric of love, beauty, fairness, truth, all things that Venus is also associated with, because you have to remember that ancient philosophers believed that beauty and truth were one and the same. They're looking at things like music and shapes in nature and the ordering of the cosmos and art, all as compatible studies. So at any rate, the point is that, love is dynamic, and beauty and terror and fear and harmony, it's not that we're trying to glorify dark things, but it's that we're trying to understand that the more that we evolve and grow consciously and make space in the soul as the meeting ground for these archetypes, the playground for these archetypes, that we start to understand that love is as much built on the scary experiences as it is the those that we consider to be most beautiful or blissful. I was at a baseball game last night, went for my best friend's birthday. We went and saw the Minnesota Twins play baseball, and I was talking about, one of my fears of bringing my kids to the game someday is them getting hit by a ball, because there's a lot of, usually every Major League Baseball season, there'll be like replays or, some story about some little kid getting, hit by a foul ball or a bat or something like that. And I was saying, like, there's a way in which, it's like I can't protect them from everything, and there's certain risks that are going to take no matter where you go and whatever. And so I walked out to go to the bathroom, and then I came back, and as I was walking back, I was waiting. I decided to wait because I didn't want to walk down while, walk down in front of people while the next pitch was coming. It's just kind of a courtesy at a ball game. So the next pitch comes, and the batter swings and accidentally loses control of his bat, and it flew. They have like the safety netting now at ballparks, that because of the kind of like epidemic of people getting hit by foul balls, and it flew over the net, and it flew right over the heads of everyone in the section I was sitting, including my best friend. And it flew directly at me, and I literally had to side hop and duck, and it smashed into the wall right behind my head. And I was in the I was on the whatever, the big screen, and I'm not sure if it would have ended up hitting my legs or like where it would have struck me, but literally I was like on the big screen, and like everyone around me was looking at me, like the whole stadium, really. Not that it was a full stadium, I think it was probably half full because of COVID, but everyone was looking at me, and I was like, holy crap, you know. And I went and I sat back down. It was really surreal because right before I had gone to the bathroom, you know, we were talking about that. And I was thinking about Mars, Saturn, Uranus, and the potential for accidents. And my friend, also he's fluent in astrologies, and so he was like, you know, totally appreciating my comments about, you know, accidents at ballparks and stuff like that. So there was this near miss. And as I was sitting down, I was reflecting on it. I was like, isn't that what makes this game so compelling? And as an analogy or a metaphor for life itself, like there are flying bats in this world. You know what I mean? And it's part of the price of admission that there's this risk involved, and it's compelling to the soul that there be risk involved in love. So we can't ban or we can't banish the potential risk of that is a part of love, or a part of choosing love is the potential for pain or loss or suffering. So Pluto Venus says, don't exclude it, because if you do, it'll come and hunt you. It'll grow. It'll become like a monster in the basement, and then you'll have to face it and eventually come to this lesson that love includes darkness and suffering. It's there because love loves everything. The unconditional love that we're looking for is truly unconditional. It brings everything in to the fabric of love. It's an open center, open doors. All are welcome anytime. You can always walk right back in and bring whatever you have with you. It'll take it and it'll love it. So love also moves things that get stuck with Venus, Pluto. You know, some people will say that Venus, Pluto is going to purge, detoxify. For example, you know, if you do an elimination diet or a purge or a cleanse, your skin looks better. Some kind of, you know, I've been doing a cleanse, for example, and just finished, in fact. So the idea of the elimination of unwanted or toxic or kind of ugly or stained things, like getting a stain out of your favorite shirt, would be Venus, Pluto. A transformation of aesthetics or appearance, dealing with also intense, obsessed, demonic, or dark energies, especially around love, sex, and relationships, stalkers, jealousy, obsession, betrayal, lust, things coming up, you know, for you to see, oh, I just found this email that you've been talking to someone else. I can't tell you how many times I've seen something like that happen with Venus, Pluto, unfortunately. People who also, there's some really, like, some of the more twisted dynamics around love, sex, beauty, vanity will come up around Venus, Pluto. For example, people who glorify dark or intense energies as though they're more real, right? That's a popular, it's like, you know, and I've done it before too, but you get into this mood where you're like, oh, you know, you're kind of simple and naive. I'm the deep, dark, complex one, and it's more real. And have you ever been in a relationship with someone like that who insists that everything be real all the time? You know, dark, intense, sort of cathartic, emotional intensity, and you know, it's like fight hard and have really intense makeup sex. It's like these cycles of like hating each other and coming back together, and people are like, yeah, well, if you don't like that, you're not real, you know. And I'm like, well, you just take your realness and you know, it's like it's not true. It's not actually true. Sometimes people who, you know, it can be, you can go either way. Sometimes people avoid deep, dark, intense energies, and Venus, Pluto can address that. Other times people are obsessed with the kind of deeper, erotic, dark qualities, and it represents, you know, some kind of compulsion, some kind of way of having dealt with trauma, a way of propping up the ego. People will stay stuck in it and then insist that it's more real than other energies. As one of the things that really chilled me out was having kids and realizing how important it is that I create safe, steady, smooth rhythms and environments for my little girls, not too much crazy dark stuff right away as they're developing. Not that, not that we keep out darkness either. Fairy tales, by the way, have a lot of darkness in them. That's a very Venus-Pluto dynamic. Fairy tales with the kind of dark moral difficulties that come up, and the eating children, and what's it, Hansel and Gretel, or you know what I mean? Like fairy tales can get dark, but the point is that it can be underrated to learn how to control or harness darker energies. And in order to control or harness darker energies, you have to realize that they are real, but you also have to pass beyond the glorification of them as, well, they're realer than other things. Maybe when you're 25, I'm just playing. So anyway, people who can't stop talking about themselves, taking pictures of themselves, who try to assert their specialness or their beauty like a broken record. This is a Venus-Pluto dynamic. We all have I think we all have vanity. I'm not above it, and I'm not trying to, be judgmental, but Venus-Pluto can be that kind of compulsion to take selfies. Am I beautiful? Look at how beautiful I am. Look at how sexy I am. Look at the nice clothes I wear, or look at how good my hair is, or look at, look at the nice things I have, whatever, just constant assertion of my beauty, whether the beauty comes in terms of like, how interesting I am or whatever. So that kind of like when Venus becomes self-obsessed and almost compulsive, the compulsive need to assert specialness or beauty. People also who can't critically self-reflect because they think that any criticism means that they're ugly. So, it was a struggle for us at a yoga studio for 10 years. This is a particular issue that I think probably a lot of people out there, I know there's a lot of wellness, people in the wellness industry who watch astrology, and you can probably relate to this. People would come to the yoga studio and they would want to lose weight. And a lot of the times we would, in coaching people and working with people for a long time with their bodies, not that I have a perfect relationship with my own, but there would be kind of this back and forth that would always be taking place. On the one hand, people say, oh, I want to do yoga because I just need to lose weight and feel better about myself. And you kind of maybe help people move more into, it doesn't really matter what you look like. It's just self-acceptance. We're not here to necessarily lose weight and get a perfect body. I mean, if it happens as a byproduct, great, but like, let's not make that the focus. And you'd be kind of pushing people away from that. Then on the other hand, you'd have people come in and let's say people who were maybe struggling with motivation in their practice or off the mat in terms of the lifestyle of yoga. And they would use the mantra of self-acceptance to avoid doing things that required harder work and the need to like purge themselves of, unhealthy or unwanted behaviors. And so sometimes people would be like, well, I don't have to lose any weight. I don't need any of this to change anything about my life because I'm perfect the way I am. And it's like, well, yes, you are. And at the same time, we can't use self-acceptance as a way of avoiding changes that also need to happen for the sake of our health. So it was always this dance between those two. And sometimes people would, including myself at different times in my life, kind of go back and forth between that. So there can be sometimes a fine line, and Venus-Pluto will bring up the difficulty of using of wanting to purge yourself because you're trying to like, it's like a hammer, you're trying to chisel into the most beautiful, perfect looking thing ever. And underneath that is really just a problem with self-acceptance. Or on the other hand, you're preaching a gospel of self-acceptance and sort of flaunting yourself as you are, when sometimes maybe you need to step back and improve, purge, cleanse, change things. It's different for each person, and it's different for each person at different times and seasons of our lives, isn't it? So, but the extremes that come up around that, self-transformation versus self-acceptance. I don't need to transform. I just need to accept myself the way I am. Like, I don't need to use the excuse that I'm perfect the way that I am. I need to change. So where are those extremes in our heads or our lives right now? A good thing to think about. People who can't critically self-reflect because they think that any kind of criticism means, oh, I'm ugly. And so I won't self-reflect. Instead, I'll just preach this message of I'm fine the way that I am. Confusion between inner beauty and vanity, confusion between self-empowerment and narcissism. That's a big one too. I can say again, as a yoga studio owner for 10 years, that we saw this a lot as well. And in ourselves, to be honest, that there's sometimes where you mistake self-care for self-indulgence. You'll say like, it's time for me, I just need to do this. It's time for me, it's like, well, should it be? Are you sure? And then it's like, well, maybe it's not time for me. Maybe there's a different way of taking care of myself that doesn't involve, like whatever, all the meanest things that are coming into my mind. Okay, so confusion between self-empowerment and narcissism, inner beauty and vanity. There's sometimes a difference between beauty and toxicity, like someone who, you get kind of stuck on yourself, and it's in thinking I'm just loving myself, you become a toxic person to be around. Everything relates back to, if everything's relating back to us and our need to constantly feel good or beautiful or whatever, it's kind of like, well, the secret shadow of that is, probably an underlying insecurity. The degree to which we constantly need to assert that I'm secure is sort of the degree to which we aren't. So, you have to like take these, you can really feel these energies come up around Venus, Pluto. I already mentioned elimination diets, purgation and cleanses. Let's see. Yeah, there's another one that's out there. And I found, being in the New Age community and the psychedelic community for a long time, that this one's another hard one. People who mistake lust that leads to pain for empowerment or freedom. For example, I can't tell you how many times, seeing 10,000 clients or whatever over 10 years, that I've seen people come in and mistake, well, I just need to be free, so I'm going to have a marital affair that ends up totally demolishing my family, even if the relationship isn't viable anymore, even if the person really has good reasons for maybe not wanting to be in a relationship anymore, that there will be this like, well, it's my turn, I'm owed something, or I'm going to do whatever I want, indulge in, taste in, pursue whatever desire that I have. And I don't care what kind of destruction it creates. And this is a really powerful Venus Pluto dynamic that can come up. Like, there's this pent up energy. I'm so sick of this, this abuse or this not necessarily physical. I mean, just like, let's just say I feel tired of not being seen or loved, or I feel tired of being in this situation or something. So I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I desire. I'm going to taste whatever I want to taste. And people will mistake this for kind of like empowerment and freedom. And then what they don't realize is that they're not indulging, they're not following that impulse in a constructive way. And so it ends up creating a ton of pain and destruction. And maybe by the end, it will have been deeply transformative, because Pluto does have that effect sort of ultimately. But you wish you could go back and kind of say, how can I honor this impulse in a way that is not going to end up creating more destruction, like a wake of destruction? So sometimes you'll also see people who are driven by their base instincts, who think that they are free or empowered. For example, I guess just it's become really popular to glorify our base instincts. Like, we're all so stressed out and busy, which I can relate to too, as a father and so forth. And but you get into this space where you're like just give me the tub of ice cream. I just don't care. Like, and it's so funny and ironic, and I'm so sarcastic and whatever. And this kind of attitude, I mean, it might be just kind of funny and stupid on the level of like, a Haagen-Dazs, but when it comes to a pattern in life that we're constantly indulging in things with this kind of sarcastic, cynical, burnt out, attitude, that becomes problematic over time, because it's a way that we end up thinking that that means freedom and empowerment, but really we're being owned by our drive to consume, we're being driven by, kind of passion and working too hard, and then indulging ourselves in order to recover from working too hard. And just all of that stuff can be very Venus Pluto. It can come about in really, dramatic ways during Venus Pluto dynamics. But at the same time, sexual healing, catharsis, and darker or more erotic energies that are pent up and need to be expressed or released somehow authentically. To me, the one thing that's been a marker or indicator for me personally, and also my client practice, for whether it's healthy or not, is how many other people is it harming? It's almost like if these energies need to be released, then try to minimize the harm or damage that you do to yourself or others. And also, how much attention are you trying to draw to yourself? Can we release these energies while still being, somewhat modest? And by modesty, I don't just mean some kind of, being sort of culturally conservative. I mean being humble, just not basking in the glow of, our own awesomeness or something like that. Just being really careful of that, because bad karma comes from a lack of humility. That's one of the main things that all religious and spiritual traditions tell us. So pride comes before a fall. So just want to be really careful of that during Venus Pluto dynamics. And then with Venus in Cancer, just the death, rebirth in marriage, family, and home relationships as a major theme to watch for. So that's what I've got for today. I hope that this exploration of Venus Pluto gives you, layers upon layers of things to consider and think through. I would love to hear your stories, as always, about Venus and Pluto. I really enjoy seeing what you guys have to share in the comments section. If you were born with this, what kinds of things have you experienced? I love hearing the extreme stories, but I also like hearing mundane stories too, like really everyday stuff. So Venus Pluto, I'm going to tell you guys how it showed up in my life. One little story, I guess, before we leave. I was going to say this and I forgot. So my wife and I, it's like sometimes, very rarely, but once in a while, we have like movie night or something. We watched Karate Kid for Father's Day. I told you guys about that. That was fun. But over the weekend, we also watched a movie. A friend had recommended it to me, and I don't like horror or gore, anything like that. I don't even like films that are very violent. They were like, I do like a good thriller. Like if it puts you on the edge of your seat, almost like Alfred Hitchcock. If it puts you on the edge of your seat, but it's not necessarily super gory, then I'm kind of game for that once in a while. So this movie was called A Quiet Place. And it was, I want to say, Mary Poppins, the new Mary Poppins. I forget her name. And I think her husband, who was in The Office, and I'm forgetting his name too. But at any rate, it was a movie about a family who they're in some kind of post-apocalyptic world, and they can't make noises because the aliens that are there in the sort of post-apocalyptic world, they show up, and they'll hunt you or whatever if you make any noise. So the whole movie is about this family trying to survive without making noise, any noise. And a lot of the movie is just totally quiet, but it puts you on the edge of your seat. But the kind of twist or wrinkle in the plot is that, and I'm not, no spoilers, so don't worry, is that the main character, who I just keep thinking of as Mary Poppins because I've watched that one with my girls, is she's pregnant. So how are you going to have a baby that doesn't make any noise, right? How are you going to give birth and not make any noise? And I was like, oh, this is so Venus opposite Pluto that I would see this movie. It's like the most Venus opposite Pluto movie. So anyway, that's neither here nor there, and could be a gigantic waste of your time. So I'm not necessarily recommending it, but that showed up. I thought that was really fascinating. So as Venus perfects in opposition to Pluto, what are your stories? I'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll be probably a couple of Q&A episodes this week that are still to come. So we'll be back for more. We're going to be talking about what happens if you flip the zodiac. Should you flip the zodiac or not? If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, that should be interesting. All right. Well, that's what I've got for today. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.